Hello, Bob, and welcome all the way from Amsterdam. Thanks for being here on Queerly Beloved.
I love to be on your show, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Yes. So I'll start with the question I ask all my guests, which is who are you in this moment? But please tell me by describing the perfect drag avatar that embodies that.
Okay, so that's interesting question. That makes me think of the fact that I sometimes feel like I'm in two worlds. I've been in finance, and then also I was spiritually interested in a lot of stuff. And once I was in a Queen's Day. In the Netherlands, we have one day, there is Queen's Day, and we all go out and celebrate the Queen's birthday. But the gay people do that very enthusiastic in drag.
Hmm.
Not all do that, but some did, some do. And I once did that, but halfway. So I had a wig with the Dutch little for a girl, the little cap on it, and I had my lips and everything on, and my eyes done, and I was wearing jeans. So that was how I felt
Hmm.
then, but I still sometimes feel like in two worlds, and that will
Hmm.
be my avatar for this moment.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And that is a gift that many queer folks can bring too. Being this liminal space holder, right? To be able to have our feet in two worlds, whether it be a male and female world, or in this case, death and life, or spiritual, or more
Right.
physical, right?
Yeah.
And so it's appropriate that we're starting with that theme because we are going to explore these stories around near-death experiences, which I'm just so thrilled to get to have the chance to ask you questions. And I'll share that my drag avatar today is is very feline. They have this idea, I'm not sure if it's in Amsterdam, but the curious cat. Is that a thing? Like the curiosity of a cat?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
We
okay,
have
cool.
cats, and they are
Yeah,
curious here too. Yes.
yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for me, my drag avatar is this cat, and it's like this kind of a soft gray cat. I'm wearing gray right now, and so it's not like a mysterious black cat or a cheerful orange cat. It's like more neutral, but it's very curious and it's excited to pounce on all the stories and insights and wisdom that may come through as you share about near death experiences. I've definitely gone on many TikTok rabbit holes down the NDE search where I'm learning all these stories and hearing all these firsthand experiences of NDEs, but I've never spoken with anyone who has any expertise about them. So I'm excited to dive in. So I'm the cat. I'm the gray cat.
Yeah, so you're the curious cat, and I will inform you in. I will inform you about a lot of things.
Well, thank you. Thank you in advance. And yeah, I know you've got this new book that you just released. And so I imagine that it's fresh on your mind, these ideas. And I think when we jump into it, so the book is called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. And so as we jump into it, I'll be curious to hear what some of the major takeaways are from these NDEs. But I'd love to start first from what inspired you personally to study NDEs. I mean, you've been studying them for decades, right?
Right, yes. Yeah, the point is that I was raised Roman Catholic ages ago, and that was with hell and purgatory. And I was, as a young boy, I never liked those stories, and I thought those are not correct. So when I read Raymond Moody's book, and Raymond Moody is the one who coined the term near-death experience, in the book he recounts the story of a woman who has her life review. within her near-death experience. We will come to that later, hopefully. But in a life review, you see every little detail of your life and you see it from many perspectives. But the point was that she said she was not judged at all. There was only unconditional love for her, no matter what she did, because, of course, there were also nasty things she did, like we all do nasty things. The cat does nasty things too, I think.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
point is that there's no judgment, and that was the important thing that triggered me, that made me think. So I believe this more than the things that they say in the Roman Catholic Church, and that triggered my interest, and I studied it. I started studying it together with my economics. So I went two ways. That's the two ways that I went.
And were you studying it then in university from a scientific perspective?
No, the economics I did in university, but this I was looking for information. There was not too much information out there, and something like 30 years ago, I started really looking for information again. And then I found that there was a very important research done in the Netherlands,
Mm.
and that was repeated again in the United States and the United Kingdom. And that research is really important. There's other research done that is, I think, also very important to give some circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real. Because, I'm a scientist. I need to know if these are just stories or that they are real, that there's something real going on. And the other research that I would like to speak about a little later is the things that triggered my scientific mind and thought, well, this is really the way to go.
So on that note, are there any stories or research studies that have proven that these things are real and true, or what can help us feel more certain in understanding that these aren't just hallucinations?
Yes. Well, there's two strands of research that are important. The first one was the one that was done in the Netherlands, and I'll quickly explain what that was. It was that there was a protocol that everyone that was brought into the hospital having had a heart, how do you say that? A heart stopping of the
Uh-huh.
heart,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and were resuscitated again, were asked the question, do you have a recollection of the time you were out?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sounds like no one remembers anything, but that was not the case. Of the 344 people, there were like 62 people, persons remembering something, and they
Wow.
had the NDEs. So now you have two groups, one group
Wow.
without the NDE and one with the NDE, and then you can compare them both. And if there's a difference between the two groups, then it could trigger, or that could be the cause of an NDE, because often it was said it's just a lack of oxygen in the brains, or
Mm.
substances being created in the brain when it's dying, when something happens there that triggers all these hallucinations. Well, the
Mm.
point was that there was no difference between these two groups. So there was both groups
Mm.
had lack of oxygen, both groups had dying brains. There were also no indication of medicine or fear of death
Mm.
of things or things like that. So the point is that we don't really know what triggers an NDE, but it's
Mm.
certainly not those that are mentioned so often.
Got it.
Now, the other strand of research is more the stories, because
Mm-hmm.
in some of the stories, people say they have this out of body experience. They go out of their body and
Mm-hmm.
then they can roam around the place they were in, either in the hospital or near the crash site where they had the accident or so. And then
Mm-hmm.
they can see things happened there or something around. And then when they come back again in their body, they can say, I saw this and that, something that they cannot have seen from the perspective of their body. And when that is documented, when it's confirmed independently, then you have verifiable out of body experiences. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there are hundreds of those stories that are
Mm,
really nice, and I can give you an example. But these are the stories that I think give circumstantial evidence that
mm,
NDEs are a first step. At least it shows that your consciousness can be separate from your body. It doesn't need your body to exist.
yeah, I was mentioning that I've watched a lot of these TikTok videos, and one I came across recently, the girl was describing that she saw her dad at the hospital at the vending machine buying a Snickers bar, buying a candy bar, and she was surprised seeing him doing that because he was such a health nut. He was a vegan, and so she's dying over here, but she's able to see her dad buy this candy bar, and later she asked about it and they were like, yeah, he came and offered candy to some of the workers, and so he had done this thing that was uncharacteristic of him, and she was able to see it. The
Yeah,
other one that I saw as an interesting form of proof, I'm curious if you've come across this, was kids who have passed who are on the other side and they connect with a deceased brother or sister that their parents hadn't told them about. And they come back and they say, I had a sister, and their parents are shocked because, maybe their sister had died at birth or something, but they hadn't shared it with the kid yet. And so I thought that was a really interesting possible area of proof as well.
yeah, that's true. That's those are the stories that are in, for instance, this book, "The Self Does Not Die."
Mm,
It's in English and it's on sale in the United States, published by International Association for Near-Death Studies.
mm,
And there are hundreds of those stories. And the story of the Snickers, that reminds me of another story where
mm,
the parents were sitting in the cafeteria of the hotel of the hospital, and while the NDEer, a girl of in the 20s, she was having her NDE, and she saw that they were in the cafeteria. And then the father said, I need a smoke. I need to go outside. He was so nervous. So he went outside. And the funny thing was that the two grandmothers who were there present also went out with him to smoke. And they never smoked, would never smoke, but they were so in such a bad shape that they wanted to be with him and do the same thing. And when she said to the parents later, when she came back into her body, that she had seen all these things while she was out, they didn't believe her until she said, "Well, I saw Dad go out the hotel, out the hospital to smoke, and the two grannies went with him." So that's something similar to, and that was
yeah.
documented very well. And
Wow.
it's
Wow.
important that these stories are documented and
Mm,
independently verified.
yeah. Wow. So then, just to bring it back to the basics, when we talk about an NDE, in a sense, when we talk about the 300 plus people and 60 something had the NDEs and then some of them didn't. In a sense, all of them nearly died, but some of them had an experience and some of them didn't, right? And so what is it that characterizes something as an NDE?
Yeah. You know, people say those are hallucinations, but hallucinations have there's no logic to it. There's any
Hmm.
story that doesn't make any sense. And
Hmm.
most of the time, people also forget about these hallucinations, like dreams. You can't remember the dreams either, but hallucinations also, you can't remember them after a few hours,
Hmm.
maybe a few days. But an NDE is totally different because the storyline makes sense. Although people say that it's not in time, the experience has a number of events that maybe take place at the same time. That's
Hmm.
very strange, but
Fascinating.
that is something that happens. But they can recount these stories again later, and they have the same elements, and they can tell those stories after 20 years
Wow.
and have the same and there's logic to it, like what you said about the child who saw that there was a brother or sister already there and but passed away, and then he met this brother or sister. So that is confirmed later by the parents, of course. And but that makes sense. There is a logic to it, and
Hmm.
that's the point. In general, you ask what is the storyline. There is no one storyline. There, each NDE is different. People talk about tunnels, but sometimes there's no tunnel at all to go through and then
Mm.
find a light at the end. Some people just pop out into this other world, and the thing is that they say that this other world that they go to is real. It's much more real than our world that we are in
Mm.
this moment. Like you're sitting on a chair, you think it's the chair is real, but the other side, they say it's much more real than our world here.
Mm. Yeah, so I'd love to hear. Well, I have two questions. One is why they are very different. Each one's different, if you have thoughts on that. And then the other question is, what are some of the top commonalities? Because I know there are many commonalities amongst all the stories. But why don't we start with why do you think people have varying experiences?
There is that's a good question because we don't really know. But what
Yeah.
I think is going on is that this other world is so different from our world here. It is perhaps another dimension, an extra dimension. We have three space dimensions and one time dimension. Maybe there they have five or even more dimensions. And if you are in another dimension, you cannot really put into words or explain what that is.
Mm.
That's something that many NDEers say. There, it's
Hmm.
ineffable. There's no
Hmm.
words or concepts enough in our language to explain what they went through. Now, if that happens, then you will have different storylines. And there is also a cultural element there. I mean,
Mm.
people that are brought up in a Christian world
Mm.
will more likely see Jesus or Mary than someone from an Islam world or from a
Mm.
Hindu world. There are stories where other people in those countries see Krishna or they see
Mm.
Muhammad or the Mahdi or whatever. There are a lot of those religious figures seen in other in NDEs of other countries.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I wonder when I hear that if ultimately the experiences are more similar than they might appear, but they're just taking different form. So these folks are having these experiences of a firsthand experience of connecting with the divine, connecting with God, connecting with this source energy, but that it's going to happen through their framework, through the lens that they see spirituality.
exactly,
Mm,
exactly. Yeah,
mm,
and there's also for a fact that people can influence their NDE. Like there's this one story that a woman had her NDE and she was hanging in this wonderful dark black velvety space, but and she felt wonderful. There was a lot of love for her, and it was soothing, and it was wonderful. And but after a while, she thought, well, it's kind of dull. It's just black. I would like to see something else. And then she said it was just like a big hand with paintbrushes came along and painted for her the most wonderful scenes with rolling hills and butterflies and trees and
mm,
streams, whatever. And those are the things that she wanted to see, and she gets that.
mm.
Um, so there is, yeah, you can influence to a certain extent, I think, your NDE. There, it's welcoming for everyone, so they will do things to make you at ease. That's how I also interpret it.
Yeah.
The commonalities you asked about
Yes, but
those
before you do,
situations.
yeah, that makes a lot
Okay.
of sense to me that we would have more impact and influence in this other dimension, this spiritual realm, because ultimately there is this knowing that we are creators. that God is, the creator with a capital C, and we are made in the image of God and we are creators. And it's not as easy to do that here on this physical plane. We can do it, and the more that we connect with our creatorhood, the more that we are able to create our own realities in this magical way. But I imagine in this spiritual plane, this other dimension, it's like that. It's like you think it and it appears. It's an easier thing to access. And so if we are in that position of creatorhood, of course, our NDE experience is going to be influenced by us creating that experience.
Yeah, based on what you already experienced on Earth, those
Yeah.
elements will be there. Yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. The commonalities. Let's get into it.
yeah.
And yeah, and as you share, yeah, if pieces from the book want to come up too, that's great.
Yeah, the commonalities. So, what I would think is a main commonality is love, unconditional
Mm,
love. There are so many
mm,
wonderful descriptions of how people experience this love. That's the number one thing.
mm,
The other thing is that people feel that they are one with, well, at least that they have a very thorough connection with everyone,
mm,
with other people, but also with nature. But some people take it even further. They say it's not only an interconnection with others, but we actually are one. We feel like one. And there are also people that take it even further, and they say we are all God.
mm,
And there are some very nice quotes. One person, a Dutch woman who had her NDE, and could tell that in her book. Many people write books about their NDE, and that's
mm,
wonderful. It's so brave of people to do that. She
mm,
said, this is her quote: I feel completely perfect, completely one with the light and the love, and I know it is God.
mm,
I am in God, and God is in me. We are one, we are perfect unity. So
beautiful.
that's one of those quotes. And there is another, a very nice quote. That's I think this is a nice one because this person, she said, because you drop your body, yes, you get out of your
Mm-hmm.
body, you don't have your body anymore, and it's often said your body is really confining. It's this
Mm,
structure that is they don't like to go back into it anymore. That's also
mm,
very nice. People say it is dirty, it's cold,
mm,
and it's far too small to contain
mm.
us. One person even said
Fascinating.
it's like they had to put an elephant into a Coca-Cola can.
Oh,
It's
wow. Fascinating.
and others
Mm,
said, you know, my expanse was so big, and they had to squeeze that into this little cold, dirty diver suit. How could
wow.
and
Fascinating.
she said they squeezed me by hugging me very tightly and then squeezed me into this body. So that's what happened.
Huh.
And this person that I'm trying to tell her story, she said dropping the body is really wonderful because you don't have any anxieties anymore. You don't have pain. It falls away immediately. But then
Mm,
she said it even continues after that because your consciousness is still there, but you will drop that as well. She said, I went to the place where I no longer exist as a separate entity, and it's like
mm,
a drop in the ocean. You're totally
mm,
dissolved. There's no separate consciousness. There is a vastness, and you are dissolved in whatever words we use for the Godhead. So, what this tells me is that some of these NDEs really feel that we go to this other place, but we eventually will be dissolved in something that is God. And and
mm,
and if a child is born, then part of God is being put into this child to do things and be you or me or one of the listeners or any of the listeners.
mm.
That's how I think things work. So those are the two communalities.
Hmm.
Wow.
Commonalities. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you say it. Difficult word for me.
Yeah, no problem.
But
Hmm.
that's what I would say. But there are also stories of people that see a wonderful landscapes, that see deceased family members,
Hmm.
or yeah, sometimes, as I said, religious figures, the light,
And then at
being,
some point, is there often a story of they get to make a choice to go back into their human
yes,
body?
yeah. Sometimes, well, often it's said it's not your time. You really have to go back because there's a reason for you to be on Earth.
Okay,
We all
okay.
have a reason to be on Earth.
Uh-huh.
So they are told you have to go back. And sometimes people don't want to go back, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes people want to go back. So there are
Yes.
also people who want voluntarily to go back because they have children to look after,
Yes.
with parents or whatever reason.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes, if they don't want to go back, there is a reasoning, sometimes a reasoning why you have to go back, and that's because you have something to do. You're being shown what your purpose is on Earth.
Yes.
Funny thing is, when you go back to Earth and you're back in your body, you don't know what that purpose is. Everything with it is, as I said,
Interesting.
the elephant in the Coca-Cola can. There's a lot of elephant beside the Coca-Cola can.
Ah, interesting.
You can't
Interesting.
go, everything can't go in there.
Interesting. So, when you talked about dissolving into the void, into the God void, that's the piece that I sometimes, when I think about death, feel afraid of. It's not that I don't believe in God and believe in this next step, but it's this fear of the essence of who I am not existing anymore. And
Yeah.
so what it brings up for me is also this question around like past lives. Like I'm curious if having studied this stuff, if you have any ideas or thoughts on is there a possibility where we go back and we maintain some essence of who we are before we maybe dissolve into God, but then that essence comes back out and goes into a new life? Or I don't know. Do you hear where I'm going with this and have any thoughts to share?
I do have thoughts about that. It's, what I understand is that who you are, the person you are, the person I am, the people that are listening, you
Hmm.
have an ego. It's there's your consciousness has some kind of characteristics. Those
Hmm.
characteristics are just, you can see it as the role you're playing on Earth,
Hmm.
and that role is made because you have certain genes.
Hmm.
Like, you would be totally different if you would be having uh, genes that are not working very well. Maybe
Hmm.
if you were sick, or you have some kind of disease, or you're mentally not quite well, or
Hmm.
for other reasons, not only those reasons, but sometimes in previous times, and maybe even still, if you are black, you're being discriminated. So
Hmm.
those are parts of your role. Another part of your role is also being created by the way you have been brought up. I always
Hmm.
say, if you're brought up in an affluent society with loving parents, it's totally different than when you were brought up a suburb, or in a backyard somewhere in a big city in a country that is very poor, and
Hmm.
having examples of parents and people around you that shoot each other or rape each other,
Hmm.
trade
Hmm.
drugs. It's totally different. So your
Hmm.
role will be different.
Hmm.
Um, so once you step off the stage, and the stage is the earth,
Hmm.
you don't have to do your role anymore. You will become what you
Hmm.
really are. And
Hmm.
in here, say, you are not the person you think you are. You are a divine being. You are a
Hmm.
spark of the divine. Once you drop your ego, once you drop your body, which is a very confining thing, then you become who you really are. And people say something like, "Oh, and now I remember who I am. I am
Mm-hmm.
more than I just am on earth. I'm
Mm-hmm.
more than that. I'm really part of the divine, or I am divine."
Mm-hmm.
So why be so afraid of dropping that? You are divine.
Hmm.
Isn't that wonderful to know?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that perspective. And what about past lives? Is there any
Yeah.
insight that comes in there?
No past lives. There are NDEs that say, I've seen some of my past lives, or I've seen them all. There are also NDEs that say, well, I don't have any feeling that reincarnation
Hmm.
is real.
Hmm.
And interestingly, there is research done, and the percentages that say there is reincarnation or there is no reincarnation is the same as in the general public.
Huh.
So the NDE doesn't change that. So it has no
Hmm.
influence over it. But I have my own ideas about that. And it's more like, but that's my personal idea. It's not in my book, because in my book I have hundreds of quotes of NDEs, and
Mm-hmm.
I leave it up to the reader to come to their
Sure.
own conclusion. Because I feel that if you cannot understand what an NDE is if you hear just one story. You have to have
Sure.
more points of view. It's just like looking at a building. You can look
Mm-hmm.
at a building from one angle and you don't see the whole building. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have more points of view, and that's what I try to do with all the quotes in my book. It's actually mainly quotes,
So
and
since it's not in the book, do you mind sharing your perspective on reincarnation?
yes, yes, I will. I said before that I really one of the things that I got from NDEs is that we are one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if you go to extremes, uh, just try to follow me. It's if you
Mm-hmm.
go to extremes with being one, then when you die, when I die, we go back to this oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And then if a child is born, there's a vacancy. There's
Mm-hmm.
something needs to go in there
Mm-hmm.
to live that body.
Mm-hmm.
Who is that? There's only one. There,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the word God so much. It's more like the supreme one
Mm-hmm.
that just gives a little drop into this body, and then it becomes you or me or one of the listeners, and
Mm-hmm.
then we start our lives. But when we die, we go back again. So there's no necessity for you to have had previous lives,
Mm-hmm.
because you have had all the lives there are. You have
Mm-hmm.
been Nefertiti, you have been Napoleon, you have been the first woman
Mm-hmm.
on the market here in Amsterdam in the 17th century.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I look at it. We don't need other lives. Moreover, reincarnation is always thought of something that you reincarnate into a future life. Why a
Mm-hmm.
future life? The thing we understand from NDEs is that time is not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Quote from one of the NDEs is that time is there all at the same time. Or my experience was not in time, it was between time.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could see through time, both in the future and in history at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. I could see with things how things are rolling out and how things were as if I were present there. So why is there always this notion of reincarnation into the future life? That
Hmm, got it.
doesn't
Hmm,
make sense
interesting.
to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because in a sense, yeah, you're saying that it's not so individualized reincarnation, but if we are, if like the new child is made from that God energy, that or that one energy, that supreme one energy, then in a sense, there is all of those previous lives, but it's like all the lives. It's just we're made of the same substance as the
Correct.
supreme one. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, and there's another reason why I say this, because in life reviews,
Hmm.
some people have a life review in an NDE, not
Hmm.
everyone. As I said, not every NDE is the same. You don't have, it's not a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
But some people have a life review and they
Where they
see what,
see all the things that happen in their life very quickly.
yeah, and but they see it from not only their perspective, they see it
Mm.
from the other perspective. They
Yep.
see it from, as one person said, from the receiver.
I got it.
So
Interesting.
even either it's nice what you did to the other person or not so nice, but you
Got
see
it.
it from their perspective. You are that other person for a brief moment, and you see what you did to or for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's, you can only do that when there is a unity, when there is no
Mm-hmm.
division between you and me,
Mm-hmm.
eventually. And yeah, that's the idea.
And so one of the things that I know I wanted to bring into this particular conversation for the queer listeners is, have you heard stories from LGBTQ folks? And I'm curious if they have had any insights around their role as queer people.
Yes, there are wonderful quotes of NDEs, queer NDEs, in my book also, three examples. And let me give you an example. I have to look that up because it's one of them is a person um, who was into rock and roll and then had his a problem with his health, and then he died.
Hmm.
And but he was very, how do you say that, weary about being gay. He tried
Mm-hmm.
to hide it from others, and he thought it was not very good to be gay, but he was
Mm-hmm.
gay anyway. You can't you can't walk away from your feelings, can you? Well, I
Mm-hmm.
can't. Anyway, and then he had his life review, and his life review was like, they showed only the things that were sort of non-gay,
Mm-hmm.
but he had the feeling that's not complete. It's not a complete overview. And then he had a second kind of overview. And in this second kind of overview, no, he asked really, is it okay to be gay? And they then the others, and that's the light, or the people looking with you to your what your life is, and they started laughing out loud, and they said, who do you think make gay people? And I thought that was wonderful to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we laughed for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
And there's this other person that he said, a friend of his passed away before him. So when he had his NDE, this friend was already dead.
Hmm.
So he was very sad about this person passing away, and he thought his life was not of any interest to anyone. And
Hmm.
he took pills and drank a lot of tequila, and then he had his he lost his consciousness, and then he had his NDE. And in his NDE, he suddenly met this person that his friend that was dead, and then he thinks, okay, if you are there and I can talk to you, and you're dead, then I must be dead too. And then he realizes that something went wrong, and he's dead. And then he starts to having this conversation with this person, and this person knew that this NDEer had a difficult time on earth with friends, and his family especially not liking him to be gay. And then uh, he said, uh, this friend indicated most emphatically that I should always openly celebrate and honor my sexuality as a
Hmm.
precious gift of God.
Hmm.
This was a starting revelation to me, especially after a lifetime of secrecy, fear, and guilt. So,
Hmm.
and that's what comes out of a lot of NDEs. It doesn't matter who you are, what you have done, even the people that are, well, that are bad. I mean, I don't like the word bad and good, because on the other side, those
Hmm.
words lose their meaning.
Hmm.
Um, they Everyone is okay as they
Hmm.
are. There's another one of a woman in New York who lived her life in a southern state, in the Bible Belt, and
Mhm.
of course in secrecy. And then, but she was married in New York, and she
Mhm.
had an allergy which closed off her throat. And fortunately, there was an ambulance next to her house, so they were very quick at the scene and rescued her. But she had her NDE anyway, and in her NDE, sometimes you fly very quick or you go through a tunnel, and for her it was like she was shooting off into the universe.
Mm.
And then suddenly she slowed down and she saw her grandparents standing there. And the grandparents, she didn't like them too much,
Mhm.
but they were there to ask forgiveness for what they did
Mm.
to her, because they said, we understand now how difficult it must have been for you to live your life in an area where we were brought up. And so
Mm.
they asked for apologies, and then
Mhm.
she accepted them, but she wanted to go on. So she shot off further. She went
Mhm.
further, and then she finally found she met, yeah, some people say God. I
Mhm.
don't like the word God. It's this something that has a lot of power and a lot of love. And
Mhm.
then she asked God, um, well, I've been gay, and that's not good for the church, because I've always been taught that that's an abomination. It's God throws homosexuals in hell. And then she asked him, I am gay. Will you still love me?
Hmm.
And then God loves, and then takes her in his arms and flies through space,
Hmm.
and on a very happy flight. And
Hmm.
he says, you are my child. I
Hmm.
love you. I love you. I love you. And
Hmm.
then he stops and then he says to her in a southern accent, he says, go get him.
Ha 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 ha.
And then, and
Wow.
then that was the moment that she was thrown back into her body again. It was like
Wow.
a coach that sent the player back onto the
Ugh,
field. Go get them.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for
But the
sharing those
message
stories.
is the message is that it doesn't matter if you're gay or not. You
Yeah.
are loved beyond your wildest dreams,
Yeah.
and celebrate your gayness and be who you
Yeah.
are. The most important thing there is love.
Hmm.
Practice it, um, show it to others, allow
Hmm.
others to love you. It's a dual street. You love someone else or many people, not
Hmm.
only one. Love everyone.
Hmm. I love that invitation. I'm curious, what impact studying NDEs has had on your life, your spiritual life, the way you live your life? In what ways does it inform how you go about your life?
That's a very good question. You know what someone said who studied NDEs a lot, and I must say I agree with him. It is that it's a benign virus. So you are affected with something that changes your life in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not saying that I'm a saint or whatever. There's something else that I want to say. NDEers who have seen the light or say they have seen God, or they don't turn into saints. They are still
Mm-hmm.
the people that they were before, because there's a reason why they are on earth.
Mm.
But I forgot what I wanted to
But
say.
for you, what has been the impact of studying these
And the impact
NDEs?
for me is that I, the fact that love is so important,
Mm.
um, that I am actually other people,
Mm.
that makes you change the way you do your life. You are more
Mm.
considerate of other people. You're more considerate of nature. And that's what I
Mm.
hope also for the general public. If they if people would really understand that veridical observations of verifiable out of body experience, like the guy with the Snickers,
Mm-hmm.
so that's real, people will look for what are the main messages, and the main messages are like love and being one. If I do something to you, I can't just walk away and think that's it. I don't feel anything. I will,
Mm-hmm.
because I will have my life review. Moreover, I am you as well. It's like a zero
Mm-hmm.
sum game. I can't just do something to you and don't feel anything. I will feel it. If
Mm-hmm.
you're conscious of that, you will do things differently. And again, I'm not a saint. If I'm, you have to see me on my bicycle rushing through Amsterdam, the traffic. I'm not the nicest person there, but I, you know, I made myself try to smile 3 times to a person that I don't know and hope to have some smile back again. That's nice to have a smile
Mm-hmm.
back. That's wonderful. But I forget that sometimes, and I don't always reach 3.
Oh, I love that. I love that very practical intention of 3 smiles a day to a stranger. And what I love is that there is this opportunity that we humans have every single day to choose love, that we can put some intention in that choice. We can be proactive to tap into that love energy. And it could be for a person at a coffee shop, or it could be for a tree in your backyard. But the more that we practice love, the more that we get to receive love. And so let's take advantage of that opportunity and let's keep giving and receiving more and more love. This universe, this world certainly needs it.
Very wisely said. You
Mm,
know, it reminds me of one of the NDEs who had her life review, and she was kind of like satisfied with how it went. She was nice to everyone, and then she missed something. She said she saw it again, and then she saw the people, the small moments in life where you just walk because you are in a hurry and you don't look around, like at the
mm,
cashier where there is someone and you
mm,
smile to that person. She saw that although there are so many moments that she could have made a difference by just smiling at someone, or just saying a nice word, or just letting someone first or something like that, because you don't
mm,
know what goes on in someone else's life. Maybe your
mm,
smile or your gesture makes their day, and it
mm,
has a big impact.
mm,
And she learned the small things are very, very important.
beautiful. Wow. What an important lesson. I feel like that's a beautiful place to end, but if there is anything else you would like to share, that would be wonderful.
There is maybe one story of a little girl, eight
Yeah,
years old.
please. Cool. 8 years
I
old, you
like
said?
8 years.
Wow.
Sometimes, most stories are because of an accident or a medical critical situation,
Mm,
like a heart attack or something. But sometimes it is because of an assault or something not so
mm,
nice. In this case, she was assaulted by 2 men who abducted her and took her away and tried to drown her.
mm,
And she was underwater with her face facing upward. She saw the sun through the water. She saw the guy's face, and she at the same time she had the perspective of from above, looking
mm,
down on the scene, and she saw her father coming rushing towards her because he had heard her scream.
mm,
Now, she had her NDE, and during her NDE she said, well, I was going through this tunnel. At the end of it there was this elderly man, and you have to remember she was 8 years old. She said, that couldn't have been anyone else than God. And God said to me, you have to go back. And life is not very difficult. You just have to have in mind 4 ingredients that will make it. And the 4 ingredients he gave to her, and those were love, be loved, just be, and experience life.
mm.
if you really go through these four ingredients, the first two is really you need to do something for it. It's love someone else or love many people, not,
Mhm.
not the lover you have, but also your the people at your work, the people in the
Mhm.
street, but also allow them to love you. Sometimes that is
Mm.
also difficult, but
Mhm.
just be how you are. If you're gay,
Mm.
just be how you are. That's good enough.
Mm.
You're good enough
Mm.
as you are. And
Mm.
then experience life. You can do that by just sitting on a chair and doing nothing. But it
Mm.
is nicer to do things. Just go about, do things, experience life. That's
Mm.
one of the things that I understand from all these NDEs. Like if you're on the other side, it's just everything is wonderful, everything is hunky dory.
Mhm.
But it's nice to be here in this worldly environment with all the limitations, because there you can just practice love. You can just do things that in a confined environment, and
Mm.
that's the nice thing. What I understand from NDE is just experience life.
Mm. Love, be loved, just be, and experience life. So simple and so powerful. Yeah, beautiful. Well,
And what I understand, everyone is okay as they
mm.
are. I mean, if
Mm.
you pass away, there's no hell, no purgatory.
Mm.
And I certainly believe that. I cannot prove that, but why would there be anything else? I know there are some distressing NDEs, but they may be the results of our collective conscious, or your personal conscious. What you have experienced in your life will pop up,
Mm.
maybe the first stage, but eventually everyone goes home. There are people that explicitly say, and the ears that explicitly have heard the other side say, there is no purgatory, no hell. So that's where I started.
Mm.
I didn't like purgatory, I didn't like
Mhm.
hell, and I believe they are not there because it's also said by these people. What's
Which
your
is
opinion?
why I feel like the study of NDEs, whether it's going down the TikTok rabbit hole or reading this book, this beautiful book that you're putting out to the world, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, I think that they can really serve people who are fearful of death, which is most people on the planet are
Yeah.
afraid of death. And so I feel like it can bring a lot of peace in addition to bringing these deep pieces of wisdom through. I think it can also alleviate fear and allow people to have a more peaceful relationship with death.
I hope that my book will contribute to that. I really hope.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all that you're doing in this field. I'll have a link to your book in the show notes. It's been such a pleasure being the curious cat, getting to ask all these questions and hear these stories. It's a really, really fascinating subject. And I'm grateful to you for spending some time with me and the listeners to share about your expertise in this area.
It's wonderful being with you. Really, I enjoyed it very much. And I hope your listeners will be fine.
Awesome. Thank you.